What if I told you that hidden beneath the Roman temples of Lebanon lies something that was never supposed to be found, evidence of a civilization so advanced, so impossibly powerful, that history itself has been rewritten to bury their existence? Don't dismiss this as fantasy. Not yet, because what's concealed under these ancient stones defies every explanation we've been given about human capability, about ancient technology, about the very limits of what is possible. Imagine standing before a wall of stone, not bricks, not blocks you could lift with a team of men. We're talking about individual stones that weigh more than a fully loaded Boeing 747, 800 tons each one. That's 1,600,000 pounds of solid limestone, carved with surgical precision, transported across nearly a kilometer of ancient terrain, lifted 30 feet into the air and placed so perfectly against neighboring stones that you literally cannot, slide a credit card between the seams. The precision is inhuman. The scale is impossible. The engineering is unexplainable. The Romans, they couldn't do this. They built magnificent aqueducts, yes. They engineered roads that lasted millennia. They constructed the Colosseum, the Pantheon, architectural marvels that still inspire awe today. But this is something else entirely. We couldn't do this. Not today. Not with our modern cranes that can lift 1,200 tons under perfect conditions. Not with computerized hydraulics. Not with laser-guided precision tools. Not with everything we claim makes us superior to the ancients. The largest stones ever moved in modern construction projects weigh around 300 tons. We celebrate these achievements as triumphs of engineering. We write papers about them. We develop new technologies specifically to handle them. And yet here in Lebanon, beneath structures we attribute to Rome, sit stones nearly 3 times that weight, moved without steel, without engines, without any of the technology we consider essential. So who did? What hands shaped these megalithic monsters? What minds conceived of construction on this scale? What civilization possessed capabilities so far beyond our own that we've had to erase them from history just to maintain our illusion of progress? History tells us a simple story, a convenient story. According to mainstream archaeology, Baalbek was a Roman city. Jupiter's temple, they say, Bacchus's shrine, built by engineers of the empire around the 1st century CE, a testament to Roman ambition and engineering prowess. The official narrative is clean, organized, comfortable. The Romans conquered this region during the reign of Augustus. They found a strategic location in the Bekaa Valley, elevated and defensible. They decided to build a temple complex worthy of the gods, Jupiter, Bacchus, Venus. They quarried stone. They engineered foundations. They erected columns that still pierce the Lebanese sky 2,000 years later. And yes, the Romans were here. The evidence is undeniable. Their columns still stand, weathered but magnificent, reaching toward the heavens with that distinctive classical ambition. Their architecture decorates the upper levels, Corinthian capitals, detailed friezes show the unmistakable aesthetic of imperial Rome. Their inscriptions mark their presence like signatures on a borrowed canvas. Latin texts proclaiming the glory of emperors and the power of gods. Walk through the court of Bacchus and you see Rome. The perfectly proportioned temple of Bacchus, one of the best preserved Roman temples in the world, stands as testament to their architectural sophistication. Every column placement calculated, every proportion harmonious, every decorative element precisely where Roman aesthetic principles demanded it be. This is what tourists see. This is what guidebooks describe. This is what archaeologists point to when they say Baalbek, Roman temple complex, 1st to 3rd century CE. But this is where the story begins to fracture, where the official narrative develops cracks that no amount of academic cement can fill. Because beneath those Roman temples, concealed under the very foundations of their construction, lies something they could never have built, something they themselves marveled at with the same confusion we feel today, something they attributed not to human hands, but to beings from a forgotten age, hidden beneath the surface, buried by time, covered by layer after layer of later construction. The megalithic platform, and this platform, this impossible foundation of stones that dwarf anything Rome ever moved, wasn't built by the empire. The Romans found it. They built on top of it. They incorporated it into their temples, not because they created it, but because they couldn't move it, because it was already ancient when Rome was young, because removing it would have been more impossible than working around it. Ancient writers called this place Heliopolis. Heliopolis, the city of the sun. But before that, it was Baalbek, named for Baal, the ancient Canaanite deity whose worship in this valley stretches back into prehistory. Before that, the Greeks called it the dwelling place of the Titans, those primordial giants who existed before even the Olympian gods. And before that, we are told there is nothing, only silence, only darkness, only the convenient void where inconvenient truths are buried. But the stones remember what history has forgotten. The stones that lie beneath Roman achievement tell a different story, a story of capabilities we can barely comprehend, a story of builders whose names have been erased from every record, whose civilization has been scrubbed from the timeline of human development, whose very existence contradicts everything we've been taught about the steady, linear progression from primitive to advanced. Let us speak of mathematics, of physics, of the cold, undeniable reality of weight and mass and human limitation. Let us approach this not with mysticism, but with measurement, not with speculation, but with science, because the numbers alone tell a story that mainstream archaeology refuses to acknowledge. These are not the largest stones at Baalbek. Walk along the northern wall, a section tourists rarely see, hidden from the main temple complex, and you'll find blocks that measure 12 feet in height, 25 feet in length, perhaps 15 feet in depth. Conservative estimates place each at 400 tons. 400 tons. Let that number settle in your mind. 800,000 pounds. The weight of 100 African elephants. The weight of 3 adult blue whales. The weight of a small office building compressed into a single block of stone. That's 500 adult men, each lifting 1,600 pounds, each simultaneously, for nearly a kilometer of rough, uneven terrain, while maintaining perfect coordination, because if even one section of workers falters, the entire stone tilts, shifts, becomes impossible to control, while lifting the block 30 feet into the air using nothing but rope and wood, while placing it with millimeter precision against stones already in position, creating seams so tight that water cannot penetrate them even after thousands of years of rain. The official explanation: ramps, rollers, ropes. The ingenuity of Roman engineering. They tell us the Romans used earthen ramps to raise these stones. They tell us wooden rollers distributed the weight. They tell us thousands of workers pulled in unison, coordinated by drum beats and work songs, moving these megalithic blocks inch by impossible inch. But here's what they don't tell you. Here's what the mathematics reveals when you actually calculate the forces involved. The weathering patterns on these lower stones are dramatically different from the Roman structures above them. Not slightly different, dramatically different, thousands of years different. The limestone shows extreme deterioration, deep erosion channels, surface pitting, the kind of weathering consistent with exposure during periods when Lebanon's climate was far wetter than it is today. We're talking about climate conditions that existed at the end of the last ice age, when this region received rainfall patterns completely unlike the Mediterranean climate of Roman times. The joinery is surgical, and I mean that literally. Look at this seam where two 400-ton blocks meet. The fit is so precise you cannot fit a razor blade between them. Not a credit card, not a piece of paper, a razor blade. We're talking about tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters across surfaces that span dozens of feet. This is not mortar. This is not cement. This is not fill material squeezed between imperfect cuts. This is stone placed against stone with a precision that modern architecture struggles to replicate. Modern buildings use expansion joints because we know that perfect stone-to-stone contact across massive surfaces is nearly impossible to achieve. We know that stone expands and contracts with temperature. We know that hairline gaps are inevitable, but here there are no gaps. The ancient builders achieved what we consider impossible. The Romans left detailed records of their construction projects, meticulous accounts, diagrams showing pulley systems and crane designs, expense reports listing the cost of materials, the wages of workers, the time required for each phase of construction, boasts of their achievements carved into the very stones they laid, inscriptions celebrating emperors, commemorating dedication dates, claiming eternal glory for their engineering prowess. Yet there is no Roman record of quarrying these megalithic blocks, no account of how they moved them, no celebration of what would have been the greatest engineering achievement of their empire, of any empire, no inscription saying Emperor Trajan moved these 800-ton stones, no diagram showing how they did it, no no expense report calculating the cost. Why? Why would Rome, which documented the construction of every aqueduct, every road, every temple, remain completely silent about moving stones 3 times larger than anything they moved anywhere else in their vast empire? Why would they fail to boast about an achievement that would have dwarfed the Colosseum, the Pantheon, every other engineering marvel they ever created? Because they didn't build this. They built on top of this. They found it, covered it, and renamed it. Just as countless cultures have done throughout human history, claiming the works of the ancients as their own, burying the truth beneath new foundations, rewriting history to place themselves at the center of achievement. The Romans were brilliant engineers, but they were honest about their capabilities, and their silence about these stones speaks louder than any inscription ever could. Now we arrive at the heart of the mystery: the Western Wall, the Trilithon, 3 stones, 800 tons each, 2,400 tons total, sitting 30 feet above the foundation level, fitted so precisely that the seams between them are nearly invisible. Let us approach this scientifically. Let us set aside speculation and deal only in measurable fact. And let us apply the principles of physics and engineering that govern every construction project in the modern world. Each block measures 62 to 64 feet in length, 14 to 15 feet in height, 12 to 14 feet in depth. Volume, approximately 13,000 cubic feet per block. Weight, 800 to 1,000 tons per block, depending on the specific density of the limestone used. Elevation, 20 to 30 feet above foundation level. Distance from quarry, 0.8 kilometers, nearly half a mile of transport across terrain that was no smoother in antiquity than it is today. Modern crane technology has limits, hard limits, physical limits that cannot be overcome with better engineering or stronger materials. The strongest mobile cranes in the world, the kind used to construct skyscrapers, the kind that cost tens of millions of dollars and require weeks of setup, can lift at maximum capacity approximately 1,200 tons, and they can only do this with extensive preparation on level ground, with outriggers extending dozens of feet in every direction to distribute the load, with steel cables rated for forces that would snap any natural fiber instantly, with hydraulic systems that can make micro adjustments to prevent catastrophic imbalance, with computed load distributions and stabilization mechanisms that took centuries to develop and require computers to operate. Even then, lifts of this magnitude are rare. They make engineering news. They require special permits. They involve teams of specialists and months of planning. But here we see evidence of different technology. Walk up to the Western Wall and look closely at the stone surfaces. You'll see marks that official archaeology struggles to explain. Circular patterns carved into limestone, not chipped, not pecked, not gradually worn away by metal tools abrading stone. Carved, cut, sliced, as if by rotary tools moving through solid rock like a blade through soft clay. As if the stone itself were somehow made temporarily malleable, shaped while soft, then allowed to harden again into its final form. And these precisely drilled holes, perfectly square cutouts, their corners sharp, their walls smooth, removed from solid megalithic blocks with a precision that suggests advanced boring equipment, not the kind of rough, hand-chiseled holes you see in most ancient stonework. These are machined. At least they appear machined. They have the characteristics of modern precision drilling, but they exist on stones that predate any technology we know of. The conventional explanation relies on one fundamental assumption: that these stones were moved using only human and animal power, primitive tools, and earthen ramps. That thousands of workers, using techniques unchanged since the pyramids, somehow accomplished what modern engineering considers impossible. But the mathematics reveals something else entirely. 800 tons on wooden rollers? Let's calculate. The strongest wood available in antiquity, oak, cedar, has a compressive strength of about 8,000 pounds per square inch. An 800-ton stone exerts a ground pressure that would instantly splinter any wooden rollers. You would need rollers so massive, so thick, that their own weight would make them impossible impossible to move. On sleds, the friction coefficient between wood and stone is approximately 0.4. That means moving an 800-ton stone on a wooden sled requires overcoming 320 tons of friction force, even with thousands of workers pulling, even with the sled on perfectly smooth ground, which the terrain between the quarry and Baalbek definitely is not. The force required exceeds anything achievable with rope and human muscle. On ramps, this is where the numbers become truly absurd. To move an 800-ton stone up a 30-foot elevation gain, you need a ramp, but ramps for moving heavy stones can't be steep. The angle must be gentle enough that the pulling force doesn't exceed what's physically possible. Standard engineering practices suggest a grade no steeper than 110 for extremely heavy loads. That means for every foot of height, you need 10 feet of ramp length. To raise a stone 30 feet, you would need a ramp 300 feet long, but that's not the full calculation. The ramp itself has to support 800 tons, which means it needs to be wide, let's say 20 feet, and structurally sound. An earthen ramp of those dimensions would require approximately 60,000 cubic feet of fill material. That's a significant construction project in its own right, requiring thousands of worker hours just to build the ramp, which then has to be dismantled after the stone is moved. But here's where it gets worse. The ramp from the quarry to the site isn't just 30 feet high. The quarry is lower than the construction site. You're not just lifting the stone, you're moving it uphill. The total elevation change is closer to 50 feet, and the distance is 0.8 of a kilometer. You would need a ramp nearly 8 kilometers long at a gentle enough grade to move such weight, and no evidence of such a ramp exists. No archaeological trace, no historical mention, no geological indication that the landscape was ever modified in such a way. We're told that 500 men could move these blocks. This number appears in various academic papers, usually with a footnote suggesting it's a conservative estimate or a theoretical possibility. But let's calculate what 500 men can actually do. A strong man pulling at maximum effort can generate approximately 100 pounds of pulling force. That's a sustained pull, not a momentary burst. 500 men, therefore, can generate 50,000 pounds, 25 tons of pulling force. 25 tons to move an 800-ton stone. That's 3%. 3% of the force needed to overcome basic friction before you even consider the additional force needed to move the stone uphill, to lift it onto rollers, to adjust its position for precise placement. You would need not 500 men, you would need 8,000 men just to overcome friction on level ground, probably 15,000 to move it uphill, and coordinating 15,000 workers pulling in exact synchronization, without radios, without computers, without any way to ensure perfect coordination across the entire length of the rope line is a logistics problem that borders on impossible. 8,000 to 15,000 workers, perfectly coordinated, pulling in exact synchronization for days or weeks across treacherous terrain without a single catastrophic failure that would cause the stone to slip, tilt, or crush hundreds of workers beneath its impossible weight. Does this seem reasonable? Does this seem likely? Or does it seem like a story we've been told to avoid asking deeper questions? A convenient explanation that sounds plausible until you actually run the numbers? A narrative designed to fit what we think ancient people could do rather than what the evidence actually suggests. The stones tell a different story. They whisper of capabilities we don't possess, of technology we can't replicate, of builders whose methods remain as mysterious today as they were when Rome first stumbled upon these megalithic foundations and decided to build their temples on top of something they could neither understand nor reproduce. Let us speak plainly about what the evidence reveals, about what lies hidden beneath the surface, about what the stones themselves are trying to tell us. The megalithic platform at Baalbek predates the Romans. It predates the Phoenicians. It predates every civilization we have clear historical records for in this region. This isn't speculation. The weathering alone tells us this. The construction techniques tell us this. The complete absence of Roman documentation tells us this. The very scale of the work tells us this. What we're looking at isn't decoration. It isn't foundation stones chosen for convenience. It isn't Roman engineers getting ambitious with their building projects. This is a deliberate burial, layer upon layer of construction built to conceal what came before. The Romans didn't remove these stones because they couldn't, so they incorporated them. They built around them. They used them as foundations for for their temples because these megalithic blocks weren't going anywhere. But who did build them? Ancient texts. Texts that mainstream archaeology dismisses as mythology, as folklore, as primitive attempts to explain what primitive minds couldn't understand, speak of a different origin. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text, speaks of Cain, the son of Adam, founding this city before the Great Flood. Not just founding it, building it with stone, creating structures meant to survive the very destruction of the world. Why would a text from antiquity specify that these structures were built before the flood unless that detail mattered? Unless the builders knew catastrophe was coming and built accordingly. The Bible speaks of Nephilim, giants who walked the earth in those days, beings of extraordinary power who built monuments that would outlast empires. Genesis describes them as the offspring of sons of God and daughters of men, beings who possessed capabilities that seemed superhuman. And consistently, these beings are associated with megalithic construction, with stoneworks on a scale that defied normal human capability. The Greeks attributed these stones to the Titans, beings who existed before the gods themselves, primordial forces of construction and destruction who shaped the world in ages now lost to memory. In Greek mythology, the Titans aren't just strong, they're builders. They create, they shape reality itself. And when the Greeks encountered Baalbek, they didn't claim they built it. They didn't say, we did this. They said the Titans did it. Beings from before their own civilization, from before memory. The Arabs called this place the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, preserving legends that these stones were moved not by human hands, but by supernatural force. Stories tell of jinn commanded by Solomon, supernatural beings of smoke and fire who could accomplish what flesh and blood could not, or by magic that modern minds cannot comprehend. Not illusions, not tricks, but actual manipulation of physical reality in ways that our physics cannot explain. Medieval travelers who visited Baalbek uniformly attributed the megalithic platform to giants or demons or magic, not because they were stupid, not because they lacked powers of observation, but because they looked at 800-ton stones lifted 30 feet in the air and honestly reported that human capability, as they understood it, could not have achieved this. But what if these legends are not fantasy? What if they are memories, distorted by time, wrapped in metaphor, filtered through the lens of cultures that lacked our technical vocabulary, but fundamentally recording something real? What if giants is how ancient people described a civilization with capabilities so far beyond their own that they seemed superhuman? What if magic is how they described technology they couldn't understand, just as a medieval peasant watching a modern helicopter would describe it as magical, as flying through supernatural means, because they lack the framework to understand internal combustion engines and aerodynamic lift? Because Baalbek is not unique, and this is where the story expands beyond a single site, beyond a single mystery, into something that challenges the entire narrative of human civilization. The precision joinery we see here, stone fitted to stone with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters, appears in Egypt's Valley Temple at Giza. Not similar joinery, identical joinery, the same impossible precision, the same unexplained technique. The massive stone manipulation, blocks weighing hundreds of tons moved and lifted and placed with inexplicable precision, appears at Sacsayhuaman in Peru. Different continent, different culture, we're told, yet the same megalithic ambition, the same mysterious capabilities, the weathering pattern suggesting extreme antiquity, erosion that indicates exposure during different climatic conditions, appear at the Sphinx in Egypt. Erosion that suggests the Sphinx is far, far older than Egyptology claims. Erosion that some geologists argue could only have been caused by heavy rainfall in a period when Egypt's climate was radically different from the desert conditions of dynastic times. Different continents, different supposed civilizations, separated by oceans and millennia according to conventional chronology, yet the same impossible precision, the same megalithic scale, the same mysterious techniques that modern engineering cannot reproduce. How do we explain this? Standard archaeology says it's parallel development, independent invention, different cultures facing similar challenges, developing similar solutions. But this isn't pottery. This isn't the wheel. This isn't basic tool making that any culture might develop independently. This is precision stone cutting that modern technology struggles to replicate. This is movement of weights that modern cranes can barely handle. This is construction on a scale that requires not just advanced technology, but a complete technological infrastructure, quarrying, transport, precision cutting, heavy lifting, all working in concert. And it appears around the world in places that weren't supposed to have contact with each other. What we are looking at is not the work of Romans playing with oversized blocks. We are looking at the remnants of a global megalithic civilization, one that possessed technology we have lost, knowledge we have forgotten, capabilities that challenge everything we believe about the linear progression of human development. They built in stone because stone endures, metal corrodes, wood rots, paper burns, but stone, especially stone on this scale, survives floods, earthquakes, the rise and fall of civilizations, the erosion of millennia. They built on a scale so massive that even catastrophic floods, earthquakes, and the erosion of millennia could not erase their work. They didn't build these platforms for a single generation. They built them to last tens of thousands of years. Why? They built, perhaps, as a message or a warning to whatever civilizations would come after them. A message encoded in the only medium that could survive whatever catastrophe they foresaw. A message we're only beginning to read. And we have inherited their monuments without inheriting their wisdom. We see their works and call them impossible. We measure their precision and call it inexplicable. We calculate their engineering and declare it beyond human capability. But they were human, or at least some form of human. They lived on this planet. They worked with stone. They left evidence of their civilization scattered across the globe. The question isn't whether they existed. The stones prove they existed. The question is, what did they know that we've forgotten? But the implications stretch far beyond Lebanon, far beyond a single temple complex in the Bekaa Valley, far beyond one mystery that we can dismiss as an anomaly, an outlier, an interesting curiosity that doesn't really challenge our understanding of history, because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. From Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built 11,000 years ago when humans were supposedly primitive hunter-gatherers scratching out subsistence livings with stone tools, yet somehow organizing to carve massive stone pillars decorated with sophisticated artistic representations and transporting multi-ton blocks to construct what may be the world's first temple complex, to the precision polygonal masonry of Cusco, where stones with dozens of angles fit together so perfectly that you cannot slide paper between them, and where some blocks weigh over 100 tons yet show no signs of mortar or any adhesive substance. From the massive limestone blocks of the Great Pyramid's foundation, blocks that weigh 70 tons in the King's Chamber alone lifted 300 feet above ground level with such precision that the entire pyramid, containing 2.5 million stone blocks, varies from perfect alignment by less than 2 inches to the mysterious H blocks of Puma Punku in Bolivia. Stones weighing over 100 tons carved with such geometric precision that they appear machine-tooled, with perfectly straight edges, perfectly flat surfaces, and perfectly right angles that modern stone workers struggle to replicate even with diamond-tipped tools. We see a pattern, a global pattern of megalithic construction that official chronology cannot explain, that conventional archaeology struggles to address, that forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about human origins and the development of civilization. Look at Easter Island, where 800-ton statues were somehow moved across the island and erected despite the complete absence of any trees large enough to serve as rollers or any evidence of the massive earth-moving projects that conventional theories require. Look at Ollantaytambo in Peru, where stones weighing 50 tons were transported from a quarry on the opposite side of a river valley, then lifted and fitted with such precision that modern engineers examining the site admit they don't know how it was done. Look at the Osirian in Egypt, a structure built with megalithic blocks that weigh over 100 tons each, constructed with a precision that suggests advanced surveying and engineering capabilities, yet attributed to a pharaoh whose other constructions show no evidence of such advanced stone-working ability. These are not primitive peoples experimenting with stone. These are not early attempts at construction that gradually improved over time. These are the fingerprints of a sophisticated, technologically advanced civilization that existed in the deep past, before the the ice melted, before the seas rose, before the catastrophes that ancient legends worldwide describe as the time when the world was destroyed and remade. And those legends, they're more consistent than modern academia wants to admit. The Sumerian king list speaks of a great flood that destroyed the world before history began. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes a deluge that wiped out civilization. Greek mythology preserves stories of Atlantis, an advanced civilization destroyed by catastrophe. Hindu texts describe cycles of destruction and rebirth, with advanced civilizations rising and falling in each cycle. Native American legends speak of previous worlds that were destroyed, with only a few survivors carrying knowledge forward. Chinese mythology describes great floods that reshaped the world. These aren't just stories, they're memories. Cultural memories of actual events, passed down through generations, distorted by time but preserving core truths about catastrophes that reshaped human civilization. And the megalithic construction we see worldwide, that's the physical evidence. That's what survived the catastrophes. That's what the survivors built, or what remained from before the catastrophes. Monuments in stone, because only stone could endure what was coming. The precision alone tells us this: you do not develop surgical accuracy in stone cutting by accident. You don't stumble into the ability to fit 100-ton blocks together with millimeter precision. This is not trial and error. This is not gradual improvement. This is mastery. This is sophisticated technology applied systematically across multiple sites, multiple continents, multiple projects of staggering scale and ambition. You do not move 1,000-ton blocks on a whim. You don't transport 800-ton stones nearly a kilometer unless you have a compelling reason and a proven method, unless you've done it before, unless you have the infrastructure, the technology, the organizational capability to accomplish such feats routinely. You do not build platforms designed to last for tens of thousands of years unless you know with absolute certainty that cataclysm is coming and that only stone will survive, unless you've witnessed destruction before and you're building for the long term, unless you're trying to preserve something, knowledge, capability, evidence of your existence for whoever comes after. They knew something we are only beginning to remember. They witnessed something that drove them to build monuments that would outlast empires, outlast languages, outlast memory itself. What did they see? What did they experience? What catastrophe were they preparing for or recovering from? The geological record shows evidence of massive flooding at the end of the last ice age. Sea levels rose 400 feet as the ice sheets melted. Coastlines that had been dry land for thousands of years disappeared beneath the waves. Entire ecosystems shifted. Climate patterns changed radically. What had been fertile plains became deserts. What had been temperate became tropical. Any civilization that existed during that period, any cities built on coastlines, any agricultural centers developed in regions that would become uninhabitable would have been wiped out, erased, buried beneath hundreds of feet of water, or rendered uninhabitable by climate shifts. Is it any wonder that legends worldwide speak of advanced civilizations destroyed by flood? Is it any wonder that the only surviving evidence of their existence would be megalithic structures built far from coastlines, built at elevations safe from rising seas, built with such massive scale that even catastrophic environmental changes couldn't erase them? And we who consider ourselves the pinnacle of human achievement, we who pride ourselves on our technology and our knowledge, we cannot even explain how they did it, let alone replicate their works. We can land probes on Mars, but we cannot move 800-ton stones with the precision they achieved. We can split atoms and sequence genomes, but we cannot cut and fit megalithic blocks with the accuracy they demonstrated. We can build skyscrapers and suspension bridges, but we cannot construct platforms that will still be standing, still be precisely aligned tens of thousands of years from now. What does that tell you about the true trajectory of human civilization? What does it reveal about what we have lost? What does it suggest about the possibility, the probability that we are not the first advanced civilization on this planet, but merely the latest, building on ruins we don't understand and calling ourselves advanced because we've forgotten how much more capable our predecessors were? Stand here beneath these 800-ton monoliths and feel the weight of time pressing down like the stones themselves. Feel the presence of something ancient, something powerful, something we've been taught to forget. Official history offers you a a narrative of steady progress, from primitive to advanced, from simple to complex, from stone tools to smartphones, in an unbroken line of human development. A comfortable story where we are the culmination, the peak, the most advanced civilization that has ever existed. They tell us our ancestors were cave dwellers who gradually learned agriculture, gradually developed writing, gradually built cities, and eventually, after thousands of years of slow progress, achieved what we might recognize as civilization. They tell us the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids with copper tools and wooden ramps. They tell us the Romans engineered aqueducts and roads with nothing but manual labor and clever geometry. They tell us that every achievement of the ancient world can be explained by human muscle, primitive tools, and patient determination. But Baalbek whispers a different truth. It whispers of knowledge forgotten, of capabilities lost, of a civilization so ancient that we have erased them from collective memory, buried them beneath newer temples, covered them with the achievements of later cultures, preserving only their impossible architecture as mute testimony to their existence. Because here is what mainstream archaeology will not tell you. Here is what the official narrative carefully steps around. The Romans found these stones and could not explain them, couldn't move them, couldn't explain them. Roman historians who documented everything, who left detailed records of construction techniques, who boasted of their engineering prowess in inscriptions carved into every major building project, they were silent about Baalbek's megalithic platform. Why? Because they knew they didn't build it. They knew it predated them. They knew it represented capabilities they did not possess, so they built over it. Medieval travelers found them and attributed them to magic, not because medieval people were stupid, but because they honestly assessed what they saw and concluded that human capability, as they understood it, could not achieve this. Arab historians preserve legends of supernatural builders, jinn, and giants and beings of power, because those legends came from somewhere, because someone, sometime in the distant past, saw these stones being moved and could only explain it in terms of supernatural force. And we find them now, with all our modern understanding, all our engineering expertise, all our technological sophistication, all our computers and laser levels and materials science and structural engineering, and we still cannot explain them. We cannot replicate them. We can barely comprehend them. We make excuses. We propose theories that collapse under mathematical scrutiny. We suggest methods that would be impossible to execute. We attribute capabilities to ancient peoples that exceed what we ourselves can achieve. Then we claim they did it with primitive tools and simple techniques. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. We cannot move 800-ton stones today, but somehow ancient people with copper tools and wooden rollers could. We cannot cut stone with millimeter precision across dozens of feet, but somehow ancient masons with hand tools achieved this routinely. We cannot organize 15,000 workers to pull in perfect synchronization, but somehow ancient civilizations with no communications technology manage this as a matter of course. Either we are missing something fundamental about ancient capabilities, or we are deliberately ignoring evidence that contradicts our comfortable narrative of progress. 800 tons, lifted by hands unknown, in ages forgotten, using methods lost to time, now buried beneath the structures of those who came after, covered by Roman temples, hidden by later construction, preserved by accident rather than intention, but preserved nonetheless. The stones are still here. The evidence still exists. The mystery remains unsolved. Who were they? Not the Romans, not the Phoenicians, not any civilization we have names for, any culture we have records of, any people who fit comfortably into our chronology of human development. Who were they? A global civilization that built in stone across multiple continents. A sophisticated culture with advanced stoneworking technology. A people who knew catastrophe was coming and built to survive it. A civilization that rose to heights we cannot fully comprehend, then fell so completely that only their megalithic monuments remain as evidence they ever existed. Where did they go? Destroyed by the catastrophes, their monuments were built to survive, reduced to scattered survivors who preserved only fragments of their knowledge in legends and myths, wiped out so thoroughly that even their name is lost to history. And what did they know that we have yet to rediscover? How did they cut stone with such precision? How did they move weights we consider impossible? How did they achieve construction on a scale we cannot replicate? What technology technology did they possess? What understanding of physics, of materials, of engineering did they have that we lack? Perhaps the real question is not, how was Baalbek built? Perhaps the real question is, what else lies hidden beneath the temples we think we know? What other evidence of ancient advanced civilization has been buried beneath later construction? What other monuments have been attributed to cultures that merely inherited them? What other impossible achievements have been explained away with theories that don't survive mathematical scrutiny? How much of what we call ancient history is actually the history of people discovering, inhabiting, and claiming the works of a far more ancient civilization? Builders whose capabilities exceeded our own, whose knowledge has been lost, whose very existence has been erased from the record. And if we've forgotten a civilization this advanced, this capable, this sophisticated, what else have we forgotten? What other truths lie buried beneath the sand of official narratives? What other mysteries wait beneath the stones of structures we think we understand? The megalithic platform at Baalbek is not just an archaeological anomaly. It is not just an interesting puzzle for engineers to ponder. It is evidence, physical, measurable, undeniable evidence that human history is far older, far more complex, and far more advanced than we have been taught. The stones cannot lie. The mathematics cannot be disputed. The precision speaks for itself. Something extraordinary happened here. Someone with extraordinary capabilities built these foundations. And whoever they were, whatever they achieved, they did it so long ago that we have no memory of them beyond legends we dismiss as mythology. But the stones remember. And if we are willing to look, really look at what they're telling us, we might begin to remember too.